Hello everyone, this is a short video just to remind you how to complete the sample assessment 1 exercise for Music 323. This is a practice version of the real assessment 1. It uses a different piece but asks just about the same types of questions. And it has to do with the types of concepts that we've been looking at so far in this course, namely thinking about cadences as the ending of phrases. How do we organize music into phrases and cadences? But then also adding the idea of a period, whether the phrases can be organized further as an antecedent phrase followed by a consequent phrase. So taking a look at this excerpt, you'll see that there's the original piece. This is a Mozart piano piece. There's 8 bars, and then there's also a staff with a treble clef right underneath. Okay. So the instructions say, for the first part, analyze the harmony of this excerpt. So what does that mean? Number 1, rewrite each new chord in its given position, either root position or in inversion, by using the blank staff. So I'm asking you to take a look at wherever you see a new chord, that is to say, a chord that you haven't seen before in the music, right? And whatever position that chord is in, that is to say, either root position or in inversion, I'm going to ask you to rewrite that chord in this blank staff. So for example, this is the first bar, right? So this is the new chord. I'm asking you to analyze, taking a look at all of the notes that is in the music and see if you can discern what is the underlying chord, what is the underlying harmony for this piece at any given time. So we're starting here. This is this is new because we haven't seen it yet. So this measure, for example, you can see that all of the notes here belong to the C major triad, right? So the underlying chord here is C major, C, E, G, C, E, G, 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 G. When I say chord tones, for example, that means that all the notes of the melody and whatever you're describing, they all share the same notes, the same letter names, right, of the overall chord that is part of the harmony of that bar or that phrase. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about when talking about non-chord tones and chord tones. In this case, the chord is laid out in the left hand, C, E, G. The right hand, the melody here, uses only chord tones, right? It uses the G from the C major chord and so forth. We are in C major, okay? So this chord, the C major triad, would be very naturally a 1 chord. But before I do that, let me just rewrite the chord here according to the instructions using the staff below. Okay, so since you have a C, E, G chord here with C as the base, so I'm going to write C, E, G. Okay, so that's the chord. Now I'm going to keep going in this example. Okay, measure 2, the chord doesn't change. Okay, so C, E, G is still C, E, G. The third bar, the chord also doesn't change. Pretty clearly from the left hand, it's still do, mi, so, do, mi, so, do, mi, so, do, mi, so. Okay, so the first 3 bars, the chord has not changed. So there's no need to rewrite any of these chords because it's still, the first 3 measures is still the C major triad. There are some non-chord tones that start to come into play here. For example, that D here in the grace note is not part of the C major triad. The B here also not part of the C major triad, right? And we'll talk about this in the next little bit, but for now, just remember that I'm asking you to rewrite the chord here in the treble clef for each new chord in succession, right? So this is new because this is the first chord we encounter. The next new chord comes here, right? So this is, if you take a look at all of the notes in this bar, right, they, if you analyze all of them, this is a G, D, and G. So these are all G's and D's in the left hand. And the right hand, D, B, and G. So the right hand also uses the D and G, but we add the B here. Okay, so you have all of the notes here is G, B, D. And that, of course, creates a G major triad with the G as the bass note. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite that G major triad here, and you can use any octave for this rewrite. I just want you to show me that you know what the chord, what the notes of the chord is, right? And then also what note is in the bass. That is to say, which inversion that chord behaves or is seen as. Okay, so in this case, this is a G major triad. I'm going to put it here, G, B, and D, right? Just because you have that G here in the bass. But alternatively, you could also have written the G, B, D up an octave. It doesn't matter. As long as you have the G, B, D, that is the notes of the chord, with G as the lowest sounding note, because that's what's happening. G is the lowest sounding note here. That would be sufficient for this part of the exercise. Right? So if we keep going, this is another instance where the chord changes. So we had the G here, right? G chord, and then the next new chord we have is back to C major, do mi so, etc. So I'm going to write C, E, and G, right? And that's the chord here. If you look at the second measure, sorry, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth measure, right? These are also notes of the C major triad, C, E, G, C, E, G, C, G, E, etc. Right? So the chord doesn't change. And it isn't until here we get the chord change again. This is looks like it's back to G major, okay? Because we have most of the notes here of the G major triad, G, D, and G, D, and D. Okay? It's missing the B, but I think we can make a pretty good case that this is still implying the G major triad, because this is basically the same pattern that we've had before in the first phrase. Right? So I would say, since you have G, D, and G here, and we've already had that 5 chord at the end of the first phrase, it makes sense to say, hey, this is also implying a G major triad. So I'm going to also write out the G major triad here. And then finally, we have the last note here. Mozart wrote just the C, right? But seeing how this is the end of a phrase, and this would be clearly heard as a cadence, we can also say that this is implying a C major sound. So I'm going to also just write down C, E, G. So that's the implied harmony here, G major going to C major. Okay, so that's the first part of this exercise.